The San Francisco fog, a chilling damp shroud, clung to Elias Thorne's minimalist apartment, mirroring the icy grip of fear that constricted his chest. 32 years old, his life was a meticulously crafted illusion of sharp lines and cold angles, a stark contrast to the emotional tempest raging within him. The city lights, usually a source of creative inspiration, felt distant and cold tonight, reflecting the chasm between his carefully constructed public persona and the agonizing secret that gnawed at his soul. His homosexuality, the familiar urban symphony, the damp scent of concrete, sharp and metallic, the mournful wail of a distant siren slicing through the night, the rhythmic groan of cable cars straining uphill, a symphony of mechanical struggle, amplified his isolation, each sound a discordant note in the melancholic melody of his self-imposed exile. He felt the weight of his silence physically, a crushing vice around his chest, each breath a labored effort, each heartbeat a drumbeat of unspoken truths. He traced the rim of his empty coffee cup, the cool porcelain offering little comfort against his trembling fingers. The ghost of his Midwestern family loomed large, their deeply ingrained traditional values, their unwavering expectations of marriage, picket fences, and the insistent chime of imagined grandchildren. A constant, agonizing weight pressing down on him. He remembered his father's calloused hands, strong and steady as they taught him to build birdhouses. The image, a painful irony, given the carefully constructed cage he'd built around his own life. Each carefully constructed lie felt like another brick in a wall he yearned to dismantle. But the terror of its collapse, the potential for shattering the carefully constructed image he presented to the world, paralyzed him. He had become a master of deception, a chameleon seamlessly blending into the heterosexual world, his every move a calculated step in a performance that had become wearying, exhausting, soul-crushing. He often caught his reflection, a stranger staring back from behind a practiced smile and rehearsed words, a spectral echo of the man he longed to be. A man brimming with laughter and genuine connection, instead of the tightly wound shell he currently inhabited. One evening, he found himself staring at a photograph of his younger self, a boy with bright, hopeful eyes, laughing freely in a sun-drenched field. The memory of that carefree joy, that unburdened self, brought a fresh wave of sorrow and longing. A single tear escaped, tracing a lonely path down his cheek as he recalled his mother's last letter, a heartfelt plea for him to find someone nice, someone to give her grandchildren, a searing pang of guilt, a visceral ache twisting in his gut. The silence, the constant performance, had become his self-imposed prison, its bars forged from fear and the unrelenting pressure of societal expectations, a prison built not of stone and steel, but of his own unspoken desires and fears. One blustery Tuesday, the rhythmic hiss of the espresso machine in his favorite cafe was a jarring counterpoint to the frantic scratching of his pencil. He sketched, lost in the intricate lines and angles of a new design, the graphite smudging slightly as his hand trembled with barely contained anxiety. Rain lashed against the large window panes, blurring the cityscape into a hazy watercolor. The cafe buzzed with the low hum of conversation, the clinking of mugs, the rhythmic thump of the barista's movements. But Elias remained oblivious, his world shrinking to the confines of his sketchbook, a desperate attempt to outrun the turmoil within. Then His gaze snagged on someone across the room. Javier Rodriguez, a sculptor with eyes the warm, honeyed color of autumn sunlight, and a smile that promised the radiant warmth of summer, was shaping a lump of clay, with hands that moved with breathtaking grace. His broad shoulders, beneath a worn denim shirt, seemed to carry the weight of a world of experience and unspoken stories. A raw, vibrant energy emanated from him, an energy Elias found strangely captivating, a counterpoint to his own carefully constructed composure. The way Javier's fingers danced across the cool clay, coaxing forth form and substance, seemed to embody a life force Elias had long suppressed, a life lived openly and honestly. Javier's uninhibited creativity, the vibrant life force pulsating from him, fell like a stark, painful accusation of a life half-lived. The air thrummed with the scent of wet pavement and rich espresso, a heady perfume that intensified the unexpected jolt that shot through Elias. A stray curl fell across Javier's forehead, the simple movement somehow more captivating than the art itself. He felt a strange, unsettling pull, a flicker of hope in the desolate landscape of his soul, a terrifying, exhilarating possibility. He was mesmerized, watching Javier's brow furrow in concentration, the way his lips moved as he hummed a wordless melody, the way the light caught the golden flecks in his eyes. Then Javier looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and a blush, hot and unexpected, stained Elias's cheeks. Javier's eyes, kind and open, held a spark of genuine curiosity, a reflection of the suppressed longing in Elias's own heart. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The world outside the cafe fading into a blur of muted sounds and indistinct shapes. He felt a pull, a fragile hope he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years, a terrifying exhilaration that threatened to overwhelm him. That evening, a courage he never knew he possessed surged within him, pushing aside years of ingrained fear. His heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs as he approached Javier, his carefully practiced nonchalance crumbling under the weight of sudden, unexpected bravery. He felt the familiar chill of anxiety, but this time it was tempered by a heady dose of exhilaration, a potent cocktail of terror and anticipation. "Excuse me," he began, his voice a little shaky, a tremor betraying his nerves. "I couldn't help but notice. Your work is incredible. The way you coax life from the clay. It's breathtaking." Javier smiled, a warm, genuine smile that eased some of Elias's anxiety. "Thank you," Javier replied, his voice a smooth baritone, a sound that resonated deep within Elias's soul. "It's a work in progress, much like life itself, wouldn't you say?" And with that simple statement, a connection was forged. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, a blend of artistic passion, shared laughter, and an easy camaraderie that surprised Elias. He learned of Javier's dedication to sustainable art, his vibrant circle of LGBTQ+ friends, a world Elias had only ever observed from afar, a world that felt both alluring and terrifyingly unfamiliar. He learned of Javier's upbringing in a small village in Mexico, the warmth of his family, the close bonds of his community, a stark contrast to his own isolating experience. The ease with which Javier spoke of his friends, the unburdened connection, filled Elias with a sense of relief and a pang of envy. He imagined the warmth of belonging, the comfort of acceptance, emotions that had been alien to him for so long. For the first time in years, A lightness, a genuine joy, bloomed within him, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. The city sounds, usually a harsh cacophony, seemed softer, less oppressive. The weight lifting from his shoulders felt almost tangible. He felt a glimmer of freedom, a fragile hope that quivered in the vast space of his loneliness. Their connection deepened, their shared moments becoming a refuge from the carefully constructed walls Elias had built around his life. Lunch breaks became explorations of San Francisco's hidden alleyways, their conversations meandering from the abstract beauty of minimalist architecture, a subject Elias had always found solace in, ironically, to the mundane joys of a perfectly brewed cup of coffee, a shared intimacy he had never allowed himself before. They discovered forgotten bookstores, redolent with the scent of aged paper and leather-bound classics, quirky cafes overflowing with the aroma of freshly ground beans and exotic spices, and breathtaking viewpoints where the city spread before them like a glittering tapestry under a vast, star-studded sky. In these spaces, their conversations flowed freely and authentically, unburdened by pretense. They held each other's gaze, their silences as meaningful as their words. One evening, sharing a quiet moment on a park bench overlooking the twinkling cityscape, Elias felt Javier's hand gently cover his own. The simple touch sent a jolt of electricity through him, a silent acknowledgement of their burgeoning connection, a recognition that felt both exhilarating and terrifyingly vulnerable. He felt the warmth of Javier's hand, a silent promise of a future he had dared only to dream of. Javier leaned closer, his eyes filled with a tenderness that made Elias's heart ache. "Elias," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the city's murmur, his breath warm against Elias's ear. "I care about you so much. More than words can say." The simple words resonated with the weight of unspoken emotions, carrying more meaning than any grand declaration of love. Tears welled in Elias's eyes as he confessed his fear, his loneliness, the crushing weight of his secret. He spoke of the exhausting performance, the soul-crushing loneliness, the gnawing fear of exposure, the sheer terror of rejection. He spoke of his dreams, his passions, buried beneath layers of fear and self-imposed limitations. He described the feeling of being a stranger in his own life, a carefully constructed image that was utterly false. Javier listened, his gaze unwavering, his silence a comforting balm, a sanctuary of acceptance in the storm of Elias's confession. He didn't pry, didn't judge, offering a level of acceptance and understanding that Elias had never known. His presence was a sanctuary, a safe haven where Elias could finally be himself, without fear of judgment or rejection. As they walked back to Elias's apartment, a soft rain began to fall, washing away the grime of the city, and symbolically, the years of silence that had shrouded Elias's life. The rain-slicked streets reflected the city lights in shimmering trails, mirroring the emotional cleansing he was beginning to experience. In the intimate quiet of his apartment, under the soft glow of a single lamp, their first kiss was a slow, tender exploration, a culmination of unspoken desires and burgeoning hope, a silent promise of a future unburdened by lies. The night unfolded in a dance of passion, a sensual exploration that transcended the physical, a profound affirmation of Elias's true self, a release of years of pent-up emotions. The taste of salt on Javier's skin, the warmth of his body, the scent of rain and clay in his hair. It overwhelmed Elias in a breathtaking wave of sensation. It was a communion of souls, a merging of two lives previously lived in shadows, finally bathed in the light of honesty and love. Their love blossomed, a vibrant flame against the encroaching darkness of Elias's carefully constructed world. But the shadow of his secret remained, a looming presence that threatened to consume him. He knew he couldn't maintain this double life forever. The need to be authentic, to be truly seen, grew stronger with each passing day. The inevitable confrontation arrived during a tense family video call. His mother's voice, laced with a forced cheerfulness that grated on his nerves, announced his sister's upcoming wedding, coupled with the cheerful pressure to bring a special someone, felt like a tidal wave threatening to engulf him. That night, driven by a desperate need to breathe freely, to shed the suffocating weight of his lies, he sat down and wrote an email, a simple act of courage that would irrevocably alter the course of his life. He poured his truth onto the page, his words raw and vulnerable, explaining his sexuality, his love for Javier, his unwavering desire to live authentically, finally free from the prison of his own making. He hit send, a tremor of fear running through him, but overshadowed by a powerful surge of relief. The response was a maelstrom of emotions: shock, anger, disbelief, hurt. His mother's voice, usually filled with warmth, cracked with disappointment, the words laced with a pain that mirrored his own. His father's silence was deafening, heavier than any outburst, a silence filled with unspoken questions and unspoken fears. His sister's initial skepticism was sharp and painful, but beneath the surface, Elias sensed a flicker of genuine concern. He braced himself for the storm, but what followed wasn't just anger. There was a raw grief emanating from his family, a profound sadness in his mother's words, a quiet, wounded dignity in his father's silence. The ensuing conversations were fraught with tears, hurt feelings, difficult silences, and the agonizing process of navigating unfamiliar emotional terrain. But amidst the pain, a flicker of understanding began to emerge, a tentative acceptance that was imperfect, messy, and ultimately deeply moving. There were heated arguments, tearful reconciliations, and long silences filled with unspoken emotions. But slowly, painstakingly, a bridge began to form, built on honesty and a willingness to understand. Elias began to see that their love for him was still there, though it needed time and understanding to fully express itself. They learned to communicate, to truly listen, to forgive, and to slowly rebuild their fractured connections. The process was arduous, filled with moments of frustration and despair, but ultimately, their love proved resilient, growing stronger through adversity. Coming out to his professional colleagues proved less daunting than he'd feared. The support he found within the LGBTQ+ community, thanks to Javier and his friends, emboldened him. He felt a sense of belonging, a feeling of being embraced by a community that understood his struggles, a community he'd longed to be a part of for so long. His colleagues, initially surprised, was ultimately supportive, admiring his courage. His work shifted subtly, infused with a newfound freedom, a sense of liberation that translated into designs that celebrated diversity, inclusivity, and authenticity. Spaces that reflected the freedom he had found within himself. The final unveiling to his wider social circles was a gradual process, Each step forward met with apprehension, but also with growing self-assurance. It wasn't easy, but with Javier's unwavering support, Elias discovered a strength he never knew he possessed. The weight of the truth, once crushing, now felt liberating. The silence that had defined his life was replaced by a symphony of voices. The voices of his friends, his family, and most importantly, his own. He was whole, free, the architect of his own life, a life built on authenticity, love, and the courage to be himself. His relationship with Javier flourished, a testament to the power of vulnerability and the transformative nature of genuine connection. The scars of his past remained, gentle reminders of his struggles, but they were overshadowed by the radiant glow of a life lived truthfully, authentically, and with unwavering joy. Elias Thorne, once the architect of silence, was now the architect of his own happiness, a happiness built not on carefully constructed facades, but on the solid foundation of truth and love. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reflected the profound peace he had finally found, a peace that transcended the fog and illuminated his life with a warmth that never seemed possible before. The fog still rolled in, but now it held a different meaning. A gentle reminder of the journey he had undertaken, a journey that had ultimately led him to the sun.